Good afternoon. Welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum for the 57th Representative District of the Illinois General Assembly. Candidates are Democrat Jonathan Carroll and Republican Rory Welch. We appreciate the candidates' willingness to share their thoughts and positions with the voters of the 57th District so that they may make an informed choice when they cast their ballots in the upcoming election. My name is Sue Swearingen, and I'm a member of the leadership team of the Glenview-Glencoe League. I represent the sponsors of this forum, the League of Women Voters of Deerfield-Lincolnshire area, Highland Park-Highwood, Lake Forest-Lake Bluff area, and Glenview-Glencoe. The League of Women Voters is a 102-year-old grassroots organization whose mission is to educate and empower voters. We are nonpartisan and do not support or oppose any party or candidate. This afternoon, we are happy to provide a Spanish interpreter. If you would like to listen to this forum in Spanish, click on the globe on your screen that says interpreter.
Por favor, para escuchar la interpretación en español, háganle clic al globo que está en la parte de abajo de su pantalla.
Before we begin, I have an announcement. The candidate forum for District 59 that was to immediately follow this one has been canceled. One of the candidates was no longer available. The league does not host forums with one candidate in order to avoid the appearance of partisanship. In keeping with league policy, today's moderator, Jan Flappen, is a league member who votes outside the 57th district. Jan lives in Chicago and is a member of the Chicago League. In her 50 years with the League of Women Voters, she has served as president of the Chicago League and on the national board. Jan?
Thank you. I'm honored to be moderating today's candidate forum for the 57th District Representative of the Illinois General Assembly. Throughout its history, the League of Women Voters provided opportunities for candidates seeking public office to speak directly to the voters through nonpartisan forums. Before we begin, I'm going to review some of the ground rules for this forum. Both candidates have signed and returned the ground rules. They specify the format, time limits, and other issues related to the conduct of the forum. I'm responsible for enforcing these rules. The candidates will begin in alphabetical order with opening statements. They'll alternate the order in which they answer questions, and each candidate will give a closing statement. Each candidate has 2 minutes for the opening, 1.5 minutes to respond to each question, and 1.5 minutes for their closing statement. The responses will be timed as you see on the screen, and we can all see them also. The timer will give a 1 minute and then a 30-second warning and then a 15-second warning. The questions have been submitted in advance and have been screened for appropriateness for the office and to avoid duplication. Regrettably, there probably won't be enough time to ask all the submitted questions. Tonight's format is a candidate forum, not a debate. Candidates are expected to accurately represent the facts. The League of Women Voters is not responsible for the accuracy of statements made by candidates. It's the responsibility of the public, news media, opposing candidates, etc., to fact-check statements made by candidates if they think it's necessary. Candidates' responses reflect their own views and opinions, and they will refrain from commenting on the views of other candidates. This forum is being recorded. The League claims copyright ownership of any recording or transcript produced of the forum. The forum will be posted in its entirety on the host League websites, social media platforms, and the Illinois League Voter Guide. Any other use of the forum recording requires express written approval of the League. Audio and video must be broadcast unedited and in its entirety, except by media reporting on these events. Finally, I want to emphasize how grateful we are to the candidates who are not only willing to serve in office, but who agreed to participate this afternoon. Now we welcome the candidates for the 57th Representative District of the Illinois General Assembly. In ballot order, candidate Rory Welch and candidate Jonathan Carroll. We'll begin with opening statements. You each have 2 minutes. Mr. Carroll will go first.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the League of Women Voters. And thank you to my opponent, Mr. Welch, for the opportunity today to talk about issues and talk about things that we think we can do in this role. And again, it's an honor to be here. And it's been an honor to serve the Illinois 57th district since 2017. I've had an opportunity to work on some really important issues during that time, including being a chief co-sponsor of the ERA, which Illinois ratified back in 2018, had the opportunity to work on issues related to food allergy safety. My daughter Brooke has several food allergies, and we've made, and through my time in the legislature, Illinois has become on the forefront of food allergy safety, including one piece of legislation that was around sesame labeling, which is now a national standard. So here in Illinois, we've set the standard around food allergy safety. I'm very proud of my 100% pro-choice voting record, including receiving endorsements from Personal PAC and Planned Parenthood. And I also had a chance to work on something that was very personal to me, which was ending the use of isolation, timeout, and restraint in schools. I shared my story of things that I dealt with through my life in this process. And thanks to the hard work of a lot of people on a bipartisan basis, we were able to end the abusive practices of isolation, timeout, and restraints in schools. If elected to serve again, I will continue working on issues that are important to me, like gun safety. Again, I've been at the forefront of gun safety since taking this job, including passing a bill back in 2018 that created a 72-hour waiting period for all gun purchases in Illinois. I see I am running out of time. So again, I appreciate this opportunity, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welch.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. And first of all, I'd like to echo Representative Carroll in thanking the League of Women Voters for hosting today's forum, as well as thanking you for being here as well, Representative Carroll. My name is Rory Welch, and while I'm a candidate for the 57th district, I'm also a married father of 4. I met my wife, who grew up in Downers Grove in New York. But in 2012, we chose to move to Illinois to be close to family and settled in Northfield. We've made Illinois our home by choice. I grew up in Louisiana, the youngest of 7, raised by a single mother. We were poor, oftentimes going without basics like running water, electricity, and food. So education is important to me because it allowed me to change the trajectory of my life. It's why I joined our local school board, and it's why education is a key tenet of my platform. But why am I running? The Illinois Constitution preamble states that we are to maintain a representative and orderly government. The heavy-handed mandates coming from Springfield, along with the ongoing corruption, has led me to this moment. It is time to get back to a government of, by, and for the people. And in addition to education, fighting corruption and heavy-handed overreach from Springfield, my platform is focused on structural budget and tax reform. We have the 6th highest tax burden in the country. We desperately need tax reform, but to achieve meaningful and lasting tax reform, we need to achieve structural budget reform. The only reason we have a balanced budget is because of the billions in federal bailout money, and this is not sustainable. I also care about public safety. People want and deserve to feel safe in their homes and neighborhoods. I believe the Safety Act needs to be overturned. 100 out of 102 states' attorneys oppose it. And we need to look no further than New York to see the disastrous effects of cashless bail. And finally, I'm running to empower parents in their role as decision makers for their children. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. And Mr. Welch, you will go first with the first question. Choose a single issue you would prioritize in the coming term and describe what should be accomplished.
I'll start with I tie them together, budget and tax reform. Okay, we need to rein in spending at the state level so that we can achieve tax reform. And what I would do is we need to focus on what are the top things that the state needs to do. In my opinion, they are education, public safety, infrastructure, mental health, and a valid safety net. And when I say valid safety net, that's inclusive of Department of Children and Family Services and foster care. And we need to focus on those 5 things and doing those 5 things really well. And everything else, I'm not saying we don't do it, okay, but everything else comes after achieving those 5 things. And once we've rationalized our spending and reined in our spending, then we can get to work dealing with real tax reform. Okay, we can no longer afford to have property taxes going up at 4 times the rate of inflation and doubling our gasoline tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question one more time? I just want to make sure
Just name one issue that you would prioritize in the coming term and describe what should be accomplished.
Sure. And this is something I've been discussing, around corruption in the state. And, I was one of the proud 19 members of the Democratic Party that came out and helped us remove Mike Madigan from power. And that's something I'm proud of because I believe in putting the state ahead of party. And that's something I did there. So something else I'd like to expand after that is I'm going to work on legislation around committee chair term limits. A lot of people don't quite understand how much power committee chairs have. But if you look at some of the people over the last few years that have gotten in trouble, generally speaking, it's around what committees they run. We need committee chair term limits. We need committee chair term limits to be 2 terms at the most. So therefore, other people have the opportunity to serve on those committees. And we make sure that no one gathers too much power in that process. On that same note, I also was a proud sponsor and voted for leadership term limits. We don't need anybody in power as long as we had in the past. So that'll change that process as well. So that's something that I'm very excited to work on, and something that we're trying to prove that this is, again, state ahead of party. Thank you.
Thank you. And you are first for the next question. Do you think assault weapons and high capacity magazines should be banned?
Yes. And I am the proud sponsor, as I mentioned in my opening statement, of a 72-hour waiting period for all gun purchases in Illinois. It was a bill that I introduced, was vetoed by our previous governor, introduced a stronger version of it, and got it signed into law. So yes, from the time I've taken office to now, one of the things that I'm really am passionate about is getting these weapons of death out of people's hands. And that's what they are. They are death machines. Any of these rifles do not belong in civilian hands. You can ask people in the military, you can ask others. They are designed to kill, and we need to get those off the streets. So I will do everything in my power to work on that issue as well. We do not need to have more weapons on the street. We need less, and we need to make sure these types of weapons are not in civilian hands.
Thank you, Mr. Welch.
Illinois already has some of the toughest gun laws in the nation, and it's not preventing the high level of gun violence in places like Chicago. So before we can enact more legislation, we need to make sure we're enforcing the ones we already have. Okay, people deserve to feel safe in their own homes and in their own neighborhoods. I think that we need to focus on the actions of people first. I support rational gun safety laws. I support expanding background checks. I support expanding those background checks to include mental health checks. And I support red flag laws as long as there's due process built into those. But with that in mind, as long as we have rational gun safety laws in place and we're enforcing those laws and we are punishing people who break those laws, then no, I do not support a ban on high capacity magazines and semi-automatic weapons.
Thank you. And you are first with the next question, which is, how would you explain the cash bail portion of the Safety Act to the voters?
The way I understand it, okay, and to be honest, I am deferring to those who know more than I do, which are the 100 out of 102 states attorneys who oppose it, is that it is discretionary up to the judges as to whether to hold someone before their trial date or not. Okay, the concern I have about it is that it's too subjective. Okay, if the concern is around fairness and application of bail, then I would rather see us find a solution that is equally tough for all violators of the law versus equally easy. Okay, and so I am concerned about this discretionary aspect of it, and I'm concerned about what's going on in New York and the challenges that they're having after they've implemented cashless bail. Okay, and I'm concerned with that carrying over into Illinois.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
Thank you very much. One of the biggest proponents of ending cash bail is former Republican Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey. And Chris Christie to this day talks about how one of his proudest accomplishments in office was ending cash bail. The federal government doesn't have cash bail, and in Texas, there's not cash bail. So there are precedents on this issue. And I believe it's up to the judges to decide which criminals belong in jail and which criminals don't. We have a legal system and a judicial system that's bogged down with low-level offenders that can't afford bail, that are taking resources from us. If we leave it up to judges' discretion, we will have a better process to this. So I believe that I believe in our judges, and I believe what our judges will be able to do. And I also believe in the fact that some of the people that have been locked up from cash bail, and we see the stories over the years of people that couldn't afford a minimal amount of cash bail that were stuck in jail for crimes that frankly did not deserve them to be in jail. We've also seen examples of people that have posted cash bail that have gone out and committed crimes again too. So this notion of getting rid of cash bail will put more criminals on the street, I think is not fair. I think what it is I think the comment that this gives people an opportunity to the due process that we all deserve.
Thank you. And the next question is yours also. What should Illinois lawmakers do about unfunded pension liabilities?
So thank you for that question. And we were over the last few years, we've had a balanced budget, and this last year we allocated over our payment to the budget system. As I've learned from one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who talks about our pension system, the tier 2 pension system that was installed probably about 10 years ago is actually more beneficial for people in the state of Illinois. Again, this is not my talking point. This is one of my Republican colleagues' talking points. And a well-run pension system will actually save the taxpayers of Illinois money because they won't have to pay into Social Security and things along those lines. So a well-run pension system will do that. In the past, it wasn't well-run. In the last few years, we've made it a priority to make sure that we've increased funding towards pensions, and we've made sure that some of the abuses in the pension system aren't happening anymore. So I think as long as we continue to do that and we stay on the path we're on now, our pensions, I believe the number I heard was within 20 years, if we continue on the path we are right now, our pension system will reach a level of health, a much better level of health. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
Thank you. The only reason we've been able to make these payments over the last few years, once again, is because of the billions we've received from the federal government, and we can't count on that, and it's not going to continue. Okay, we are obligated to those pension holders, and we need to live up to those obligations. This gets back to my original statement about budget and tax reform. We need to seriously address our spending issues, okay, and focus on the things that we have to do first. And that includes taking care of the liabilities and the obligations that we have. So it gets down to budget reform, making sure that we're paying for and funding the things that are state obligations first before we do anything else. And that's what I would do, is focus on that and make sure that all extraneous spending ceases so that we can fund the pension liabilities along with those other 5 areas.
Thank you. And you are on for the next question. Do you think any ethics reforms are needed? And if so, why?
Absolutely. I agree with my opponent on this as far as term limits for leadership positions and committee chair positions. I would extend that, though, into representatives and state senators as well. I think that the longer somebody serves in office, the more power that they accumulate. And I think that is a dangerous position. This is a flip for me. 20 years ago, I didn't believe in term limits. But when you look at the state and federal level, what's going on, I believe that term limits are absolutely necessary to prevent that accumulation of power. In addition to that, I believe that we need to strengthen the Inspector General for the legislature and giving them the subpoena power to act independently and to investigate things that are going on.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
Thank you very much. I have co-sponsored pretty much every piece of ethics legislation that has come across my desk. I've supported it. As my opponent said, as I mentioned earlier, I'm for committee chair term limits. I also saw that it was time for us to have a leadership change at the top. Electeds by electeds, leadership. I believe there should be term limits absolutely placed on those, because your vote does not go for speaker, but your vote goes for the candidate. So I think that electeds by elected should absolutely have term limits. That's why I was proud to sponsor a 10-year term limit for speaker. That's, again, all the ethics bills that come across. I believe, there are bad apples, obviously, but I believe almost all of us are in this for the right reasons and trying to do this for the right reasons. But it makes my job harder when I have colleagues around me that aren't. And I frankly do not want to serve with anybody who is not doing this for the right reasons or violating the public's trust. And so therefore, I believe that our ethics should be as strong as possible, and we should make sure that people are held accountable when they do something wrong. So thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Carroll, do you support the creation of an independent redistricting commission for our state? And if so, how should it be accomplished? And if not, why not?
This has been a conversation we've had about redistricting. And when we presented the maps in this last cycle, the maps were appealed in federal court and found to be constitutional. So I believe that the map drawing process that we have here in Illinois follows that of other states. And I'm all for a national commission on map drawing. But if we look at how the maps are drawn in states, we're still seeing challenges within that. Let's take a look at Kansas, for example. Kansas is a state that most of us would consider a red state. Kansas is a state that generally sends more Republicans than Democrats to Congress. But when they had the issue of reproductive health come on their ballot, over 70% of people supported a constitutional amendment that specifically said that. So let's make this a national standard. And if we do that, I think we'll see better results.
Thank you, Mr. Welch.
I absolutely agree that we need an independent counsel on redistricting maps. We can't wait for something to take place at the national level. This is an issue state by state, and Illinois can be a leader in this area. Okay, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, maps are drawn to benefit the party in power. And I don't think that that's fair to voters. And I think that we absolutely need an independent commission, a nonpartisan commission to run that process and to lead that process. As far as how, I honestly don't know yet. Okay, it's something that I'm investigating and trying to figure out. So I'm not going to make anything up for the sake of providing an answer. But I do agree or do believe 100% that we need an independent counsel running this process.
Thank you. And Mr. Welch, would you support measures to alleviate the burden of the current inflation on residents of Illinois? And if so, what do you propose? And if not, why not?
Inflation is hurting hardworking families in Illinois. I think the biggest thing that we can do is address our tax issues. We have the 6th highest tax burden in the nation. Okay, and while short-term measures provide temporary relief, okay, people have been moving out of the state for years, leading to us losing a congressional seat in Washington, D.C. Okay, so short-term measures are not going to alleviate that problem. We need a long-term solution which will benefit all Illinois families, and that starts with budget and tax reform.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
Sorry, I had my mute button on. Thank you for that. So I was very proud to sponsor a budget that gave people a property tax rebate, that suspended the gas tax and suspended the grocery tax. And so we did some things preemptively to try to help with that. But we do have a very high tax burden in the state. But people are starting to come in Illinois for some of our higher paying jobs. We're attracting people here. People are feeling better about the state than I think before. So we need to continue, obviously, looking at those kinds of things and looking at ways that we can certainly help people around the inflation issue. But we took some preemptive measures in the last budget to do that, and trying to continue to do that. So we recognize that as Democrats in the state, and we will continue to find ways of trying to keep more money in people's pockets.
Thank you. And Mr. Carroll, do you think additional revenue needs to be raised? And if so, how? And if not, why not?
Well, we've done some things since I've been in office around improving revenue, including we legalized cannabis and sports betting, which we're seeing a return on investment on that right now. We're looking at expanding, continue to do some gaming, expanding to create revenue sources, but we've done some of those things. Obviously there's other opportunities for us to increase revenue without hurting the taxpayers or raising taxes. Obviously we'd like to do that. So I'm open to all ideas. I think, again, we've seen a return on investment, certainly through sports betting and legalizing of cannabis and what that's brought back to the state. And, that's really important. But I think one of the other things too is we've seen a credit rating increase. Our credit rating has improved over the last few, I think it's been 5 times in the last few years. And so obviously people are noticing us as well, being more fiscally responsible. So that's great as well. So we've increased our revenue and improved our credit score. So I think we've certainly gotten along those same lines.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
Absolutely not. You don't give someone who has a spending problem more money to spend before you've addressed the spending problem. We have been irresponsible in this state for decades in how we've managed our budget and our tax base. And it's time to be responsible back to the voters of this state and to the taxpayers of this state. So before we even think about finding ways to raise more revenue, we need to do the right thing and the respectful thing to those who are paying these taxes. And we need to address our spending issues first.
Thank you. And Mr. Welch, what commitments to school funding do you support?
I am a big believer in school funding, and I support it 100%. As I said, that education is what changed my life. It's what allowed me to pull myself up out of poverty. And I believe every child should have an equal access to high quality education for themselves, okay, to allow them to pursue their dreams. So I support school funding 100%. And I've demonstrated that through my work on our local school board.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
Thank you. I'm a special education teacher by trade, so obviously I have a vested interest in education, and I think I'm proud of what Illinois schools are doing, and I'm going to tell you why. We're putting kids from our schools in universities around the country. Other states are coming to us now for our students because they realize what such a great job our schools do, including communities like ours. And I think that, to my opponent, for sure, keeping up great schools is something we're all proud of. And certainly our school boards and others in the areas have done that. And so I'm proud of what our schools are doing. I'm proud of what our students are doing. Obviously want to make sure that every kid in Illinois has the same opportunity. We've increased funding for education over the last few years. Not having a budget before this was really hampering a lot of services, including education. So I'm proud of what our schools are doing. I'm proud of what our kids are doing, and other states have noticed and certainly are coming to try to bring some of our kids to their universities as well. So that's where I stand on this.
Thank you. And Mr. Carroll, what do you think of measures to preserve more acreage as open lands, such as, but not limited to, the former Route 53 corridor?
Well, I think that there's been a lot of conversations about the 53 corridor, especially with some purchases that have been made out in that area by a certain football team. So I think the conversation around Route 53 has certainly become a conversation. But I'm very proud of the fact that I was endorsed by Sierra Club. I was endorsed by other environmental organizations for my work around the environment. Last year, I passed legislation that would make sure that we had to have combustible things that were, that had to have recyclable things used at state parks. Excuse me about that. Single-use plastics. And so, from my perspective, we have to do everything we can for the environment. I mean, we're seeing climate change. We're seeing all these things going on around us. Whatever the cause of those might be, the storms are stronger. They last longer. They're doing more damage. And the climate change is a big issue. So the more we can preserve, certainly, of our natural habitats, the better off we'll be. And that's something that I certainly would like to do and invest in the future for my children and future generations, because the environment keeps warning us of all the things that are bad that are happening, and we need to listen a lot closer. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
I believe we have an obligation and a responsibility to take care of Earth. okay, and the environment. But true sustainability isn't just about the environment. True sustainability has three aspects to it. There's a social aspect, there's an environmental aspect, and there's an economic aspect. Okay, and true sustainability is when all three of those come into balance. You can't focus on one area of those at the expense of the other two, because then it's actually not sustainable for that area. Okay, so you can't do something that might be environmentally friendly, but that bankrupts the state. Okay, so you have to find the path that brings those three areas together and in balance, and that's what allows you to drive true sustainability that benefits everyone for the long term.
Thank you. And Mr. Welch, what is the responsibility of the state of Illinois to support mental health services for its residents?
As I stated in my opening remarks, I think it's one of the top 5 responsibilities of the state. Mental health issues lead to homelessness, lead to suicide, lead to all sorts of ongoing issues that can last forever if not properly treated. And I think it's a responsibility of the state to support those efforts and to fund those efforts and to make sure that our citizens are getting the resources that they need.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
Thank you very much. So, you know, as a special education teacher, obviously something, you know, I've dealt with a lot of mental health stuff professionally. I think that we have to make sure that I think mental health is our next frontier. You know, a lot of people in my job like to use it as a talking point, but don't talk about properly funding it and how to get the resources to the people that need it. I was just recently endorsed by the social workers in Illinois for my work around mental health, and I'm very proud of that as well. And another piece of legislation I'm working on that I think all of us can certainly get behind is we're seeing some mental health breakdowns in our law enforcement. I think, you know, we have a constituent here in the 57th district whose son was serving on January 6th at the Capitol and committed suicide, and really left no signs, but it was after the insurrection that that had happened. And I think one of the things that we need to focus on is mental health for our police officers, showing them how much we support them and making sure they get those resources. So one of the pieces of legislation I'm looking to introduce is around mental health services for police officers, because I think we just need to make sure our officers are feeling safe and that they have the ability to work through issues that they face on the force.
Thank you. And Mr. Carroll, how would you work to create better bipartisan collaboration?
Well, I have a reputation sometimes of being a pretty bipartisan guy as it is. I've worked on legislation with colleagues from both sides of the aisle. One of my proudest bills I worked on was ending the use of puppy mills in Illinois. And the chief sponsor of that bill was a gentleman from out west who is a very Republican, Trump supporting guy, very proud of his support of President Trump. And we worked on that bill together. And again, politically, we couldn't be on opposite ends of the spectrum, but we found an issue that we cared about, an issue that we could work on together, and an issue that made the state of Illinois better. If somebody has a good piece of legislation, I don't care what part of the state they're from. I don't care what letter is next to their name. If it makes our state a better place, I'm absolutely all about working on a bipartisan basis. And again, I'm really proud of my relationships I've formed with several Republicans, and will continue to do that if you're nice enough to send me back to Springfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
I think bipartisanship is what's sorely missing in politics today at all levels. I think that to achieve it, you need to be willing to listen to people who disagree with you and enter into an honest dialogue. Okay, and you need to be willing to listen to what they have to say and understand what they have to say from their point of view. And it's not about changing your mind. It's about finding a path forward that works for everyone. It's not about you being right and you being winning and you winning. It's about forging a path forward that's best for the voters of Illinois and all of the families of Illinois. And you can't do that by being mean-spirited and seeking to punish people who disagree with you. You have to be respectful and enter into dialogue and listen, state your case, and find that path forward. And I've demonstrated an ability to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Welch. If elected, how would you keep your constituents informed about your actions in Springfield?
I would first of all, have an open office policy. I would publish my personal phone number so that constituents could reach out to me, my personal email so that constituents could reach out to me. And then I would look to set up communication, an ongoing communication, both electronically and by mail on a regular basis to keep them informed, and to host town hall meetings on a regular basis to hear directly from them.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll tell you that I'm very proud of a lot of the constituent services we offer out of my office. You know, I think we've always had a policy of their community first. And when someone calls our office, we don't ask them, you know, we ask them, how can we help? And we've had a track record of that for the past 5 years I've been in office. I've had my same chief of staff in that time, and we pride ourselves on constituent services. We do a regular email newsletter. We try to send out mail as often as possible, use social media for our things, and just try to make ourselves accessible to the community. I'm very proud of the fact we have people coming into our office all the time just to come in and have a conversation with us, or whatever the case may be. So we try to make ourselves as accessible in the community as possible. And I think that that's a really important part of this job, is that people have a chance to talk to you and reach out to you when they need to talk.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to announce that this will be the last question. And Mr. Carroll, in your opinion, how should a representative balance their personal beliefs with public opinion?
Thank you. That's a great question. And I think all of us sometimes, you know, in this job, one of the things that I've learned over my 5 years is that, you know, I represent not just myself, but I represent a community of you know, over 100,000 people. And I want to listen to what they have to say and hear what they think, and learn from that when you vote on really tough issues, to see where people stand on things. And I think sometimes my personal feelings on something may be different than that of what my district feels. And I'm going to go with my district. I'm a representative of them, not a representative of myself. So I always try to look for feedback and that type of stuff from my community, and then vote accordingly.
Thank you. And Mr. Welch.
Yeah, my personal opinion may be my starting point because it's what I know, but it's not how I vote. I vote on information that I obtain from my constituents. I've done it as a member of the school board. Whenever there's an issue that could be divisive, or it's just, you know, that there are two very strong schools of thought and opinions in the community about it, I talk to my constituents, and I can tell you, I don't call people I know agree with me. I don't need an echo chamber. Okay, if I'm going to make an informed decision, I need to speak to those I actually know don't agree with me, so that I can hear from them and understand what they believe, why they believe it, why it's important to them, to help shape my thought process and my decision-making process. I would do the same thing as a representative. I would seek to hear from my constituents, which are the voters in the 57th district, not my party leadership, but the voters in the 57th district, and understand what's important to them and what they want. And then I would vote to represent them, because that's the job.
Thank you. And now we will turn to the closing statements. And Mr. Welch, you are first. You have a minute and a half.
Thank you. Thank you again, first of all, to the League of Women Voters for hosting today and for allowing me to be here. Thank you to Representative Carroll for participating so that we could have this forum. In closing, I would like to say that it would be a tremendous honor to represent the 57th district in the Illinois legislature. And as your representative, I will work for you, not special interests and not the party bosses. Illinois is my home by choice, but too many people are choosing to leave Illinois. So many that we lost a seat in Congress, and they're leaving because of the heavy tax burden and because they don't feel safe. Our property taxes have increased at 4 times the rate of inflation. The state gasoline tax has doubled in the last 4 years, and people don't feel safe when state's attorneys refuse to prosecute and violators are being cut loose. We see examples almost daily, like the guy who drove a car at high speeds onto a football field during the Palatine Youth Football Program. He was arrested only to be immediately released. Real leadership is standing up and doing what's right every day. not doing what your party boss tells you because you're promised a seat on a task force. Real leadership takes courage. I've demonstrated this courage throughout my life, and I hope you give me the chance to be your representative. My promise is that I will demonstrate this courage on your behalf in Springfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll.
I'd like to echo my opponent's comments. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Welch. I think this is a very spirited conversation, very respectful. Both of us were able to share our opinions in a respectful way. And we're showing what the question was earlier, what it takes to actually to serve in this job and have conversations with people you don't always agree with and have conversations around tough issues. So I thank you for that opportunity, Mr. Welch, and I look forward to potentially future dialogue as well along those lines. I've been in Springfield for the last 5 years. I feel like I've done a lot of things to make my community a better place. I've again worked on issues around food allergy safety, around government, around responsible government, including ethics reform, TIF reform, look to do things around like property taxes and things along those lines. Like I have the Illinois Policy Institute's has a bill that they gave to, it's called the Citizens Empowerment Act, which leaves things up to the voters to decide what bodies of government they'd like to have and not have. So we recognize there might be too much government in the state. And that's something over the next term, if I'm sent back to Springfield, I want to focus on is more efficient and a better streamlined government. And we're going to do that. And I think that that's something that we're going to push for. And we're going to make sure that more people have an opportunity to have their voices heard at the table about what kind of government they want, how they want to be represented, and the bodies of government that they think that we need. Again, thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to future ones.
Thank you very much, both candidates. And thank you to the forum sponsors, the Leagues of Women Voters of Deerfield-Lincolnshire, Highland Park-Highwood, Lake Forest-Lake Bluff, and Glenview-Glencoe. You can go to their websites for key dates and other election information as you make your plan to vote on November 8th. You can find candidate information on the Illinois Voter Guide, which is right in front of you on the screen. And we hope that you will vote and encourage your family and friends and neighbors to vote on November 8th. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport.